What's up, man?
What's happening?
How's it going?
All right, it's good.
Got some goodies here, huh?
Yeah, brought a collection and assortment of stuff, so we can kind of have some props while we're doing this. It's a little more helpful.
Yeah,
to have some props.
I appreciate you getting all your stuff together, because this is all you got. You brought a lot of stuff today, so we could show everybody, a little bit of everything.
A reasonable amount.
Yeah,
But yeah, so we were talking the other day about kind of doing more of a, I guess, less conversational, slightly more teachy, I guess, version where we're going to kind of talk about like the basics of like guns, what they do, what they don't do, gun safety, that kind of stuff. Which I think is important.
Yeah.
Obviously.
I think a lot of people we fear what we don't know.
That is very true.
It is really true.
It is very true.
I know that sounds super cliche, but it's really true. So I think the more we get educated on anything, the less scared we are. For sure. Imagine
if they handed you a sports car and gave you a driver's license, but never taught you to drive the car and then said, go forth.
Yeah, right.
That would be pretty scary.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Training's important.
Yeah.
And knowing what these things do, what they don't do, how they work, just the basics of it, is pretty important. We're not going to get super technical.
So we're gonna go through handguns, rifles, some miscellaneous elements, components of the handgun.
It depends how long this podcast wants to be.
Let's
the thing about shooting or the world of shooting, I guess, is it's a rabbit hole, and how far you want to go down that rabbit hole is entirely up to each person.
Right.
But I thought we'd start with handguns just because it's probably the most common thing that people are going to own. But and I kind of break things down into three major components. You've got pistols, rifles, shotguns, just to keep it simple. There's a whole bunch more out there, but we're not going to bore everybody with the nitty gritty details, but basically that's your three main categories.
The trifecta.
Yeah. The big three, you got a pistol, you got a rifle, you got a shotgun. You got one of those three things for the most part.
And for anybody listening, you should watch this instead of listen. Because
it'll make more sense. It'll be a little more helpful.
You're going to miss out if you're just listening to this. So yeah, man, we could start with, if you want to first just kind of outline what's in front of us and why you've decided to
bring this.
These.
Yeah. We brought some other stuff, but I don't think we'll need it or get to it. So I just kind of brought, and this is by no means the entirety of the Glock line, but they're all Glock pistols. And that way we'll kind of keep apples to apples. Mm-hmm. Also, it's one of the most commonly owned, style of pistols. By most people.
Austrian made?
They're American made. It's an Austrian owned company.
I gotcha.
But they're all made in Smyrna, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. Not that it matters, but they are all technically made here. But they're super common, and the way they work is very, very similar to almost every other modern handgun made.
Nice. Bring that in just a little bit.
Bring a little bit.
Yeah.
Just like that. There we go. Is that better?
Yep.
So they're very, very common how they work. Very common to a lot of other stuff that's out there. So if you understand how these work, you'll understand how most other things work. And I wanted to keep kind of apples to apples so we don't get bogged down in minutia and minor details and things like that. And this is again, by no means all of Glock's line, but it's kind of all the major size categories that they make, from full size pistols to very, very small pocket rockets, and kind of everything, or a good sampling of all the things in between.
And
size wise.
Yeah. And the size is mainly the length of the barrel?
Size of the grip, length of the barrel, just overall size of the gun, and capacity. So, do you have a double stack magazine or a single stack magazine?
So let's start with any one of them, and let's first start with kind of naming the different parts of the gun. I think that'd be a good place to start. That way we can start describing the differences between them afterwards.
Okay, yeah,
is that cool?
We can do that.
Yeah.
I'll move this just a little bit. Yeah. So on any of these guns, any of these handguns here, and these are all nice and unloaded. We'll talk about how to do that here in just a second. But you got your grip, you got your slide, trigger, barrel, and muzzle, which is, the business end. So, keeping it simple, right? Grip, trigger, slide, barrel, muzzle. That's it.
And these are all modular. You can take them apart, essentially, right?
Yes, and they're not. There's a lot of modern guns that have come out recently where modularity is like king, and they're super modular, and you can switch parts out. Glocks are not exactly like that. they kind of come size wise. And so what most people kind of end up doing as they go down their journey as shooters is, and I guess to some degree, what we kind of recommend is you get a full-size pistol to start with to learn on. Yeah. And then as you get better and better and become more confident in your abilities, and you say, hey, I want something I can conceal carry, or I'm thinking about, you know, getting to that stage where I want to be able to carry something, you go to something a little smaller. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people jump right to that. I'm just going to buy one gun and I'm going to buy a pocket rocket and conceal carry it tomorrow. And it's like, okay, a pocket rocket is very handy when you need one, but it's typically not enough gun to really learn to shoot with. You really want something too small, hard to grip, especially if you have decent sized hands. You know, capacity is very low typically.
Capacity, how many rounds?
Yeah, how many rounds fit in the magazine. Mm-hmm. And so those are all things you want to consider, you know, before you jump to that. I just want to go buy a pocket rocket tomorrow and carry it around. It's not really the world's greatest idea. Get a mid to full size gun. Learn to shoot as you get there, you know, and you'll know when you do. Then you can start thinking about, hey, I want something that I can conceal carry. I'm kind of ready for that. You know, that's my opinion, obviously.
Right. And so
it's not the law. You can do whatever you like. But
so these all the Glock handguns are 9mm, right?
These are all 9mm, and they make many calibers. But I recommend for all new shooters, and just unless you have a compelling reason to not have 9mm, get a 9mm. You'll be happy you did.
And why that over different caliber
cost
handguns?
Of ammunition is king, right? You know, bigger bullets equals more recoil. And if you're a new shooter, you don't want to be trying to tame a beast. I got me a 357 Magnum, nifty.
Dirty hair.
Yeah, 44 mag, you know, whatever, a 10 mil, cool. But like those big bullets are expensive, which means you're not going to be able to afford, unless you're very, very wealthy, to train a lot with it. Right. You know, you'd be much better served with a 9mm. It's easy to control, easy to shoot. It's mellow, and the ammunition is ubiquitous, and it's everywhere, and it's cheap enough, depending on current political circumstances, but it's usually cheap enough that you can buy a fair bit of it for a couple $100 and go out and start getting your foot in the door and start learning the gun, learn to shoot, you know, which is, I can't stress how important that is, you know, just because you have a gun. It's like, you know, we talked about a little bit before, you know, I can afford to buy a guitar. I have no idea how to play it. It does not make me a guitar player. Right. You know, well,
that's where a lot of gun owners stop, right?
Yeah, got a gun
because it's my right. So you buy a gun, but then that's like,
yes, that's step one. You've accomplished step one.
Yeah, that wasn't that hard.
Yeah, exactly. They'll sell you whatever, but you know, yeah. So again, I don't work for Glock. I just happen to own a bunch of them. So you know, they do not pay me or anything like that. But I just thought we'd start with these because they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. And if you understand how these work, you'll understand how most modern handguns work.
So, which is the OG flagship? The 17?
The 17 was the first one they made. Now, a lot of mine are kind of altered, but this one is the Glock 17, which is the first one they made, and it's considered a duty size or full size handgun. And it's a great choice for people. But there are many other good choices as well. But I do recommend it.
This is what's the length of the barrel?
4.5. It's a 4.5 inch barrel. The next size up from that is the Glock 34. And again, these numbers and sizes don't really matter. It's a little bit longer. Same size grip, same size frame, all that stuff. Just a little bit longer barrel, a little bit longer sight radius, which is handy if you're into that.
More accuracy if it's longer, or less recoil. Is that the main?
You will get a little bit less recoil. You're not going to feel that much with only half an inch difference in barrel. But yes, this is a very tame gun to shoot, very fun gun to shoot. And it is, you know, a full size 5-inch barreled, you know, pistol. So it gives you a lot of advantages. Again, that sight radius, the distance between the front sight and the rear sight is pretty big. Now you notice this one has a dot, and these days kind of the future is dots. Everybody's putting dots on handguns, and some of these guns have dots on them, some of them don't.
And you've added a sight, it looks like, to the top there, right?
Well, yeah, so when you put a dot, it's handy to have taller sights put on so that you can see them through.
And that
the
magnifier
dot.
that's there, that
Not a magnifier.
No?
It's
Oh.
just a dot. It's just a red
that's
dot.
it.
It's just a red dot,
I see.
and it gives you the advantage to a dot. Oop, drop the mic there. The advantage to the dot over traditional sights is you're only dealing with one thing, versus when you're shooting traditional sights, they look like this, right? You're trying to line two things up,
Right.
You know, which is how it's always been done, but we can stick a dot on there, and now I only have to look at one thing.
That makes sense.
And it makes your life, to some degree, easier. But
So
either or, you know, some have dots on them, some of them don't. But either is fine.
So let's talk about some certain terminologies that I think a lot of people who don't know much about guns at all don't even know. First, the difference between bolt action or semi-automatic and automatic weapon, for one.
Oh, okay, yeah. So semi-auto and full auto, right? So when you're dealing with full auto, it means you've got an extra little piece in there inside the gun, right? And you're going to have a selector switch instead of a safety. So you're going to be able to move it from safe to semi-auto and then flip it all the way over to full auto, which means you pull the trigger and it's a machine gun, right? It's going to keep shooting until it runs out of ammo or till you let the trigger go. Right. You know, you see them in movies all the time, right? Most people do not have those. They're very expensive. If you've legally acquired one, they are legal, but they're incredibly expensive, pain in the butt to get. So most people have semi-auto. So semi-auto just means I pull the trigger, the gun cycles, right? I get one shot for every time I pull the trigger. I just don't have to manually cock the hammer back like an old cowboy gun.
Yeah, and what are those called that you have to manually? Is there a name for those?
Single action.
Single action.
You know, where I have to cock the hammer every time.
Hence why in the Westerns they would have to do that to
if
fire
you'd like
fast.
to shoot faster, you have to fan the gun, fan the hammer, you know, and they have to do that number, because you have to cock it each time.
Who's that one dude who fires like lightning fast with those guns like that, the old school?
There are several guys like that, but probably the guy you're thinking of is Jerry Michalik.
That's
and
it.
He's on YouTube constantly. That guy is phenomenal. You know, one of the, you know, he's won everything there is to win. Knows more about shooting than I'll ever know. Has forgotten more about shooting than I'll ever know. You know, won every major competition and has been doing it since before I was born. You know,
that's awesome. So that's one. As far as the magazine, which is the clip, as some people call it. No,
some people do say clip. It's incorrect, terminology. Okay. Yeah, there is a difference between magazines and clips. So this is a magazine. It's contained in a box. You know, and versus a clip, which I did not bring one because I do own something that takes clips. But, but a clip literally clips the ammunition together.
You can see the ammunition, yeah. That's what they used to use in the old rifles back in.
If you've seen any World War II movie with an M1 Garand and they shoot bang, 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 ping, and you're ping, this little thing flies out, and the guy stuffs a clip of ammunition back into the gun, that is a clip-fed weapon, right? Takes a clip, not a magazine. Any modern weapon takes a magazine, you know.
And this is what we call a dual stack, or what would you call it?
Double stack,
which means that they're kind of staggered the way they stack.
So there's 2 rows of ammunition inside the magazine, which gives you a higher capacity or more rounds, or as I like to call them, chances. You got more chances in your magazine.
Yeah.
To hit what you're shooting at, which is good. Versus a single stack gun, which had become very popular because they are skinnier.
The handle is skinnier.
It's because it's just one row of ammunition in there.
Right.
So you get fewer rounds of ammunition in your magazine, fewer chances, but it's a lot skinnier, a lot easier to conceal, that kind of thing.
So, now I've fired mainly Glocks, and a couple times, largely due to the part to the way I loaded the magazine, sometimes it doesn't chamber correctly. Due to how well it's packed. Do single stacks, are they more reliable as far as chambering?
That really comes down to the manufacturer of the magazine. Some magazines are notoriously not very good, and some are wonderful, and that just comes down to the manufacturer. Glock magazines, by and large, are considered some of the best, very reliable. They work great. 9 times out of 10. 9.9.
And chambering just means putting cocking.
Yeah, racking the gun, loading around into the chamber, which the chamber is the fancy word for this part right here inside, which is kind of hard to see, but here. So we'll use one of our dummy rounds right here. This is a dummy round, great for training in the home. It's looks like a round of ammunition, but will not fire. All right, so we'll put it in the magazine, and we will now insert the magazine, okay, and then we'll just drop. So this would be chambering a round, right? We're just going to drop our slide. That's going to put the round right there into the chamber. So now the gun's loaded, so bang, right? Then to unload, we're going to pull the slide back, push this little guy up. As our slide stop, the round will pop right out. Then you have an empty chamber. So now gun no go bang.
And let's talk about those different types of those 9mm that are in there, as far as, you know, practice rounds versus hollow points. And to my understanding, those are the only two that I know of, you know, but
those are the most common, and there's no reason to overcomplicate it with more than that for most people. Yeah, right. You've got full metal jacket ammunition or training ammunition, and then you've got a hollow point or a defensive round, something they're typically more expensive, you know, and do a different thing.
Do you have, I know.
There's a hollow point right there.
Yeah, here, can you reach that? Yeah. And then you just hold it up, and then the camera.
Yeah, so the end is actually hollow, right? And you'll see some that have fillings in them nowadays, but, you know, typically just an open-ended tip there. So they cost more, but these are what you would consider your defensive rounds. These are what your good ammo. This is what you're gonna load in your gun for home defense, for concealed carry, for whatever. And then when you're at the range, you're just gonna use range ammunition, which is the cheaper full metal jacket ammunition, right? Which I have one of those laying around here somewhere. So in comparison, so there's a full metal jacket round. It just means that the entire lead bullet is covered in a copper jacket. Full metal jacket, it's completely covered. Whereas the hollow point is going to be hollow and open on the end. And
so the difference between a hollow point, the effect of a hollow point when it hits a target, how is it different than
transfer of energy? So full metal jacket rounds or training rounds have a tendency to just poke holes and stuff, right? They go right through. Some people say, well, sometimes they can break up and all that, and that's partially true, but for the most part, they poke holes straight through stuff. The hollow point will, when it hits a target, starts to open itself up. That the force of the bullet going forwards hits that hollow end and pushes the rest of the bullet open into a, you know, pattern looks something like this, right?
Does it break up like shrapnel?
Doesn't break up and shouldn't break up. We actually don't want it to. We want it to completely open up and flatten out and get as wide as it possibly can for a number of reasons. But the biggest one is transfer of energy. We're trying to take all that energy that bullet has moving, and we want it to go into our target, transfer that energy, do its damage, and then stop.
Right. Instead of going through it and hitting somebody else, or
just poking a hole and not doing that much damage other than poking a hole.
Right.
Yeah. So when it comes to defensive ammo, yeah, you want to use your hollow points for that. Training ammo, just use your full metal jacket.
Mm-hmm. And when you're, you know, we're gonna do another video at the range with, you know, drills and basic safety tips and handling.
Sure.
But I think for now, what are the basic handling of a gun? For example, you see a lot of people always with their finger on the trigger when it shouldn't be. So let's go over like what you think.
Let's just hit the basic rules of gun safety. There's 5. They're easy, right? And then we'll talk about how they work in real life, right? Because it's easy to just say them and regurgitate them, repeat them, and then we'll talk about how they work, you know, here as we lay our hands to these things. So rule 1, right? Treat every gun as if it's always loaded, right? And that makes sense, right? These are unloaded, but we want to treat them as if they're loaded. Mm-hmm. You know, people are forever getting shot with their unloaded guns while they're cleaning their mysterious unloaded gun, and it magically shot me. It didn't magically shoot you. You failed to unload it properly. Right. And we'll talk about how to do that here in a minute too. But so treat every gun as if it's always loaded. Rule number 2, do not point a gun at anything you're not willing to destroy. Right? And that's simple. Don't point things, do not point the gun at anything you're not willing to shoot. So that counts for you, yourself. Don't wave it around.
Point it down usually.
Point it down in a safe direction, wherever that safe direction is for your environment. And we'll talk about what that means here in a little bit too. So rule number 3. So we have don't treat every gun like it's loaded. Don't point a gun at anything you're not willing to destroy. Rule number 3, and you hit on this one, it's a biggie. They're all biggies, but this one's probably the biggest. Do not put your finger on the trigger until you are ready. Some people will say till you're ready to shoot or till you're coming up on the target with the intent to fire. Either way is fine, but basically keep your finger off the trigger. We'll talk about why that one is so important here in just a second too, and how people mess that up. It's the easiest, but it's the best rule. If you have to pick one, it's better than the others. But so that's rule number 3. Rule number 4, be absolutely sure of your target, what is in front of and behind it, right? Because bullets go through things. So we want to be sure that we're not just flinging them willy-nilly. You're responsible for every round that you have, and once you send it on its way, that's it. You don't get to call it back or say sorry. Like, it's out there and you're responsible for it. So be absolutely sure of your target, what's in front of and behind it. And then rule number 5, I call it the sometimes rule. And it's if your gun has a safety, use it. Glocks do not have a manual safety switch. And that's why I call it the sometimes rule. 4 rules and sometimes 5, because when you're dealing with, like, let's say an AR or something like that, it has a safety, right? So use the safety. Shotguns have a safety. Use the safety, right? 1911 pistol, something like that. If it has a safety, use it. Glocks do not have a manual safety that you have to disengage. They do have 3 internal safeties that are working for you all of the time, which makes them very.
There's 2 on the trigger, right? There's
1 on the trigger. There's 1. There are 3 inside there that are all working for you 24/7. So
yeah, it's interesting when you grab the handgun, you can feel this little nub.
Little nubbin on there. Yeah.
That's
one of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
which one has the safety on the back where you have to?
Like a 1911 style pistol, and there are many others that have it as well. Yeah. But you've probably shot one of mine, and it has a manual safety that you have to engage and disengage every time. Rifles typically have them. Shotguns typically have them.
Is there one where your grip actually a grip safety as well?
Yes, and that's on a 1911 as well.
Okay, that's
we can pull one of those out later if we need to. But it does have one of those. But yeah, those are kind of the 5 big safety rules, right? And if you take those with you everywhere you go, every time you touch a gun, you should be okay. Sit this forward just a little bit here. So we'll talk about how those work in real life. So the biggest one, like we talked about, if you have to pick one that's more important than the others, treat it like it's loaded, right? Don't point it at anything. So when I pick this up and I go, hey, Pierre, look at this gun, how cool it is. I'm pointing it at you. Don't do that. So we're going to point it in a safe direction away from my friend, right? This gun is now unloaded, but we're going to still treat it as if it is loaded. Okay. And when I go to pick it up, I'll do what's called indexing my finger. So as soon as I go to pick the gun up, like, my finger doesn't go on the trigger, right? And that's super important because unfortunately our physiology as humans, right? When one finger closes, the others want to close. They all want to go in the same direction, make a fist, grab something, our little monkey paws want to do this. So you have to just build the habit. And after a while, it'll become so instinctual to you that you'll pick the gun up and your finger will do this automatically. But at first, for the first good while as a new shooter, you have to just be aware of that, putting that finger up here and getting it away from the trigger, right? Not putting it on the trigger. Because this part wants to grab and then this finger just wants to go right in there. So don't let it. Just put your finger there and then you're okay. Right? So keeping our finger off the trigger, treating this like it's loaded, not pointing it at anybody or anything I'm not willing to destroy. And then when it comes to shooting, I'm a big fan of, and I took a lot of them off. I think I only left one on here. It's actually my wife's gun, but keeping a light on the gun is a big one for me. I think it's super important. One of the first
for dark space for at night.
One of the first upgrades that you should get. In fact, if you can afford it, buy it when you get the gun.
You have one on that one right there.
Yeah, there's a light right here. That's what this little guy is right here.
Turn that guy on and see what it looks like. Quite bright, yeah.
Yeah, just a little flashlight. They don't weigh a lot these days. They're not crazy expensive. You can get a decent one, and goes right on the gun, and then it's right there with you, and that helps us. We talked about identifying our targets, right? We want to know what we're shooting at, and when we're at the range, it's pretty obvious. There's the target. We just put it up. we're going to shoot at it. Okay. You know,
in a very controlled environment.
In a very controlled environment. Yeah, that's easy to say and easy to do, right? As soon as you leave that range, I mean, we no longer control our environment to a large extent, right? We don't get to pick when things happen. Things go bump in the night. Oh goodness, you grab your pistol or whatever, and you go to investigate said sound, and this is the difference having a light on your gun versus not. I'm scared. I start shooting at noise or something in the dark, and you shoot at something you shouldn't be shooting at versus I can put a light on it and determine what it is that I'm shooting at. Do I need to be shooting this thing? New shooters often ask, can I make this shot? And more experienced shooters, once you've trained a good bit, have a good deal of experience, and you're a decent shooter, have all your basics and fundamentals down. The question shouldn't be, can I make this shot? It should be, should I be making this shot? Right. We need to think, be thinkers, not just, I'm nervous and I have this gun and I don't really know what I'm doing and now I'm scared. Right. And it's dark and now I'm going to start shooting at stuff. It's as
anything, the more you train, the more confident you're going to get with it, right? Even
correct.
And I'd say even in the most, because barring adrenaline, because unless you can find a way to really put yourself under some sort of that adrenaline feeling in training, which I'm sure there are some ways to do that.
Yeah, we have
in these live rooms, that recreate those situations. But unless you do that regularly, then that's another whole can of worms there, because you don't know. Everybody acts differently when that adrenaline kicks in.
You're 100% correct. Everybody does, and it's difficult to know what you're going to do. When we get into teaching shooting, or any of the major instructors out there, or the better instructors, I should say, are always going to push you to have. Our goal is to get your shooting down, your fundamentals down so pat that you don't have to even think about them. They're on autopilot, right? Grip, stance, finger, safeties, lights. You're able to control all of that without having to think about that. And that frees up space in your brain, which is limited. If you want to think of it like a computer, you're trying to free up RAM space to be information processing, right? Not worried about, something as dumb as, how I'm holding this gun. Is it loaded? What am I doing? No, that needs to all be taken care of, hopefully, as you become a better shooter, so that you have that free brain space to be processing the information. Am I standing in a good spot? Do I, what am I seeing? Taking in all the information that's going to be coming at you very quickly with that adrenaline, and trying to process that information so that you can make better decisions. Like I was talking about, not can I make this shot? Should I be making the shot?
Right.
Is this something I should be shooting at? And the only way to do that is really through training. If we can get your fundamentals down. I mean, you don't go on stage as a musician and go, what's that key again? Where'd my fingers go to do the? No, you're playing a song. It it has to be automatic. And it's the same with this or any other skill. You have to have that, all those basics and fundamentals just down, baked into the pie,
So, like I said, we'll do one at the range, but I think as far as just basic grip and stance, not necessarily standing, but just basic grip of holding the gun.
Sure. So,
go ahead and show us what that looks like.
Scoot this forward a little bit. So we talked about picking the gun up, right? So we want to just make sure that when we pick it up, we don't put our finger on the trigger there. So we have our gun here, and one of the things that we really want to do, I'm going to do this left-handed so that the camera can see us, I guess, a little bit better. So, we want our grip as far up into this space right here as we can possibly get it.
So dovetail.
If you see, you want that just
beaver tail.
Beaver tail is again on a 1911 style pistol, but you can refer to this as a beaver tail if you want to. Everyone will know what you're talking about. You want to get it up in there as high as you can possibly get it. If you have any space, and you'll see this on television all the time, an actor will be holding a gun like this, and there's this finger's worth of gap. If you do this, what happens when you start shooting is this gun is going to go everywhere. You're no chance of controlling it. Pure luck if you hit anything you're shooting at that point. So what we want to do is get our grip.
By the way, that's the same grip you want to use when you actually grip a barbell.
Yeah.
Just in case anybody knows.
Yeah. Get your hand as far up into that thing as you can possibly get it, right? If you get a little bunch in your hand there, good. That's good. So what that'll do is it'll sort of naturally make this space right here, right? Okay. And that just naturally forms. Our other hand comes together and will naturally sort of form. You want your thumbs forward, okay? And that'll naturally form a grip there. This hand will come up into here and just fold into this space, kind of naturally there. Now I've got a good grip. You want to have
thumbs right next to each other, kind of like a golf forward, similar to like a golf putter.
Yeah. I don't know about golf, but yeah, that sounds good. But yeah, your thumbs forward, and you want as much control. There's no way to get a true 360 grip on this gun, but we want as much of that as we can possibly get, as much control all the way around the gun on all sides as is humanly possible. Sadly, we can't hold the gun like this, but we want it as far up in there as we can get it. And you don't really need a death grip on the gun, over squeezing the gun. We don't need a death grip. We want a firm grip, like a firm handshake, right? It needs to be firm, but not death gripping this thing, but not so loosey-goosey that when we start shooting, the gun goes everywhere, starts wobbling.
I'd imagine that the grip should also be consistent throughout, meaning a lot of people anticipate the gunshot.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
Their grip changes, right? As you anticipate the gunshot and you pull the trigger.
And you get the flinchies, and the muzzle goes down and all that. And that's kind of stuff we can talk about at the range. That's a little bit more, I think, technical and a lot more technical than we probably want to get into for this if we're going to just kind of do an overview of stuff. But
I fired the Glock one-handed at the range when we were doing drills where we were pretending to protect a hostage or protect a civilian or whatever, and you lose a ton. I mean, I felt I had some accuracy, but the amount of accuracy I have, especially on the recoil, when you're firing one-handed, trying to fire that second shot after the first one gets
more challenging.
It's just really
gets more challenging. Yeah. So all that you see on TV, somebody's running around the room with one hand making headshots at 20 yards. I'm like, that guy's awesome.
He's good.
That guy's awesome. I've been shooting a long time and I can't do that.
Yeah. What speaking of movies, what are the from handgun use, like how they're carrying the guns to how they're firing the guns, which would you say is the most, what are some of your favorites and most realistic in that respect?
As far as gun handling, that actually has improved, I would say, to a large extent over the last, I don't know, however many years. Mostly due to a guy who lives out in California and is a big-time competitive shooter named Taryn Butler. And he been working with a lot of Hollywood people.
He did John Wick, right?
He did John Wick, and he did a bunch of others as well. But so pretty much when you see a good Hollywood shooting, or at least good handling, good gun handling skills, you can pretty well bet that guy at some point has been involved.
I saw the Keanu Reeves. There was this video of Keanu Reeves doing target practice. I don't know if it was with multiple different types of handguns too, I believe. I don't know if it was a rifle or a shotgun. I can't remember.
He's probably using all three, because he uses all three.
Alternates between them.
And that's kind of the guy that he was training with is a big time what's called 3-gun competitor, which is a type of competition where you use 3 guns: a rifle, a pistol, a shotgun. You shoot all 3 in the competition, and you're kind of constantly balancing speed and accuracy. It's very fun. It's very exciting. It's very popular. Shooting sport, I guess. And he does that. So he kind of trained everybody to do that, but it's still good. There are several other movies that are good in that regard too. A lot of the newer military films and things like that, they've forced everybody to actually train with guys so that they wouldn't look like, idiots while they're running around portraying, people. But back in the day, that wasn't a requirement. They just go, here, hold this, and the actor holds the thing.
All those Schwarzeneggers,
runs around and does whatever.
You look at like Predator, the way, when they go in the guns blazing and he's just like
from the hip,
not taking any cover.
From the hip, baby. That's the way to do it.
And then, who's it?
It's a way to make a lot of expensive noise.
Governor Jesse Ventura, the sexual tyrannosaur, he calls himself.
Oh, God.
He's firing a minigun, just standing up.
Sure.
Like, no
the
problem.
The ammo burning machine. Yes. Yes. All of that is horrid. Oh, God.
But it's awesome. It's awesomely horrid.
It's awesome now.
Well,
for nostalgia purposes.
But they probably took themselves seriously when we were, when people were watching, like,
that's
how
they
you
thought
hold
it was
a
awesome.
gun.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's unfortunate. I mean, we're kind of joking about it, but it's unfortunate. A lot of people's information about firearms sadly comes from television, which is the worst possible source, or movies and things like that.
Yeah.
Or it comes from sort of hand me down information from, well, my grandpa took me out when I was little and we shot, bottles off a fence on the farm or whatever. And I'm like, cool. That's a cool experience. But knowing how to shoot, like, those things kind of don't transfer over to, hey, I want to go buy a gun and expect that I will have the skill set to use it to defend my home and family, or be a concealed carrier or whatever.
Yeah.
Those are kind of two different things. There's a whole bunch of information that has to happen, get packed in the old brain.
Well, it's also taking the responsibility seriously, right? It's like a lot of people, because it's a right, it's our Second Amendment, all that. People assume that that's it, but it can be it, exactly.
Yeah.
But making sure you're taking, understanding that this is a deadly weapon that you have to be, and that doesn't mean you have to be afraid of it, but you just have to train it like anything. It's
like
just
anything. I liken it to cars because everybody drives a car. You know what I mean? And it has experience behind a car. Imagine if they gave you a car, they'll sell you the car, they'll sell you the gas, they'll give you a license, but don't teach you how to drive, and then send you on your way. Right. You should be fine. Yeah. No, there's a whole learning process that has to happen, and that learning process for shooting, like a lot of things, but for shooting, since that's what we're talking about, is a lifelong thing. Like I said earlier, it's a rabbit hole, and how far down that rabbit hole you want to go is kind of up to you in your journey. But at the very least, getting a good handle on your basics is huge.
So I think we probably explored this avenue. Let's actually, before we go to the rifles or shotguns, let's talk about different round types, because I think a lot of people, when you talk about the 9mm versus 45, so different systems of measurement, different types of guns, so it gets a little confusing. So,
it does.
So what would you say are like give me for handguns, I guess just for handguns now, and we can talk about it for rifles.
Sure.
What are like the main calibers, and what does the number mean, and what does that represent as far as damage and stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say the three most common pistol calibers are going to be 9mm, 45, and then probably 40.
Not 22.
22. I kind of put 22 aside because it's a rimfire and it's like its own little thing.
Right.
And so we're kind of leaving 22 out for right now because it's its own animal.
What would most Americans own? It would be.
Well, and you're correct in saying 22. That's probably the most common, but I'm talking about just major calibers that people are going to carry. Nobody carries a 22. It's target practice. It's shooting squirrels, whatever.
So
it's
most
a tiny little bullet. It's the biggest bullet that's not a BB.
Right. They teach what you teach your kids with.
Absolutely. Almost every kid's first gun is some kind of 22.
Do you think that people, because most people who even own guns, there's more guns than there are people, I would say are probably not as educated as they should be. So do you say that most people are using 22s, not as their main weapon?
No. It's.
But is that for sure? Is that the case for sure? Like, do you?
God, I would hope not. 22 is not good for. I mean, it's better than nothing, I suppose. But it's it's a training tool. It's a for hunting rabbits and squirrels and little tiny things and they're tons of fun. Tons of fun to shoot.
Because they're easy. They're easy to shoot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it's we're kind of putting 22 off to the side for right now.
So hit me with
so for handguns, I'd say 9mm, 45, and probably 40 cal. So I guess the big ones, like you talked about, what do the numbers mean? So you can tell right away, is it an American designed caliber or a European designed caliber is it measured in millimeters or caliber? Caliber is just inches, how big a round is it in inches? So 0.45 of an inch is a 45 caliber, 40 caliber is 0.4 of an inch around.
And that's where the shell is.
Yeah,
correct?
where the actual bullet is. Okay. Yeah. And then 9mm describes the same thing, but it's measured in millimeters. So the Europeans invented it, so they get to name it in millimeters because they use metric or whatever. God only knows.
Metric system is so much easier when you math.
So much easier. I'm one of those people, I admit fully. I grew up in Europe, and also I wish that we would switch to the metric system.
Except for pounds, because 2 plates is 135 and that's it.
Yeah, trying to
in the gym.
figure out like how many kilos do you lift? Get out of here.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like I don't know, man. I don't know how many kilos I bench, dude. Like, I mean, go away.
Divide by 2.2.
Yes, but yeah. So your inches and your millimeters are just describing how big the bullet is, and it's weird because one's in millimeters, one's in inches. So at the end of the day, again, I recommend the 9mm for everybody. 45 is a classic American round. Yes, it's bigger, and there are people, I like my big bullets. I'm like, it's a big fat bullet, which is true, which means it costs a bunch more.
More damage to the target.
Kinda. Theoretically.
More stopping power.
We're getting away from using stopping power these days, because stopping power for a handgun, unless you're talking something major like a 44 Magnum or something,
much of a difference, right?
It's not going to make that much difference. Where it does make a big difference is in your training budget, how big the gun is, because it's bigger bullets, so it means the whole gun's got to be bigger, and you're going to get fewer of them in your magazine, which for your concealed carriers, for your home defense people, for people like that, is a big deal.
It's also harder to shoot. The recoil on it.
It's also harder to shoot. So if you're a new shooter, you're already asking for trouble. It's like walking up and trying to bench something and you're not ready to bench that. Right. but put 405 down, Slick. It's let's see if you can't get this other thing up.
So 40 and 45 are pretty much the same size, give or take.
But then you also get into how much gunpowder is in it, and I don't want to make this super technical, which is kind of why I'm jumping around this.
Right.
So when it comes to bullets, or comes to ammunition, right? You've got how big the bullet is, the actual bullet that comes out, and then you've got how much gunpowder is in the case, right? So now this is a little tiny 9mm, but so the bullet is this part right here plus just a little bit more that's seated down below it.
Just the tip.
Yeah, just the tip. And then this shiny silver part here, if everybody could see, is your casing, right? This is your case, and this is where the gunpowder is stored. So if we make this thing longer or fatter, we can dump more gunpowder in there, and then we get more power out of it. But you pay for that in equal opposite reaction, right? Well, I got all this power coming out. That also means you have to control that power.
Right.
And you can go on, YouTube and watch people who shouldn't be shooting large, powerful weapons, making fools of themselves, shooting them very poorly and having the guns throw them around, or, wearing one in the head. Hey, I rented this, or I'm shooting my friend's 44 Magnum Dirty Harry gun or something like that because I've always wanted to, but they have no idea what they're doing, and they end up, just literally wearing it right in the head, because it's a lot of power coming out of there. And unless you have a good reason for having that kind of power, like, guys that, hunt up in Alaska and things like that, or fish up in Alaska will oftentimes carry large, powerful handguns. But they have to. They're not worried about people. They're worried about bears, man. Yeah. So they have a reason for having that enormous, powerful handgun.
Right.
They're if you're for 99% of the folks out there, 9mm will be more than it's sufficient for your needs.
So all 9mm bullets obviously have the same size casing, and they all have the same amount of gunpowder in them.
There are differences. There are minor differences. There's probably 4 or 5 common loadings for 9mm, but
and will they fit the same?
They'll all go in a 9mm gun.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but I suggest everybody just start with the standard stuff you find at the store. 115 grain is plenty great. Start shooting with that stuff. Learn how it goes. As you become a better shooter, you can experiment with more things and see if there's some other loading you like or whatever. But by the time you're ready to make that different, make those little minor decisions in your shooting, you're going to have enough experience to be making those decisions on your own.
Right. Yeah.
So for most part, just get you a 9mm standard, and you'll be fine.
Now, before we move on to rifles, did you happen to bring your suppressor by chance?
Yeah, I brought a couple.
Do you have suppressors for your handguns, or just for the rifles?
I don't think I brought one.
Not for the handguns, but for your rifles.
I don't think I brought one for the pistols. I don't think.
For pistols, okay.
I don't think so.
Suppressors, or as they call them, silencers.
Yeah.
I haven't seen every single movie I've seen. We were talking about movies. Pretty much makes silencers sound like pew pew.
Yeah.
But there's one that I recently saw It was Extraction 2, where he had a silencer on his handgun, and it actually sounded like it should, which was quite loud still.
Yeah, there's still a pop. Yes, it's not quiet like it is in the movies.
I was like, oh, look, that's that.
Yeah, we're all dying for the. We all want to know where they got theirs. None of mine sound like that.
The detective with that, or the hunter killer who's got the little pew pew and keeps walking.
Yes, any reasonable size round when you put a suppressor on it, so the suppressor. It's not a mysterious thing. It works like a car muffler, basically. It's trapping the hot, expanding, loud gases that are coming out from the explosion of firing the round, right? And it's trapping them in baffles that are inside the tube that you see, right? There are little baffles in there, and so it's stepping that hot gas down as it goes, and that's what quiets it down, just like your muffler. You know how if you put a bigger muffler on a car, it sounds louder?
Yeah.
You get the pipes on your sports car or on your Harley, it sounds a lot more, you get all that sound because you're opening it up, right? So the suppressor does the opposite. It works like a car muffler, and it steps that gas, that expanding hot gas, down into these baffles and traps it. So, not super, without getting super technical, that's just how it works. And so you could make a really, really quiet suppressor, but it has to trap a lot of gas.
It'd have to be
so
this
yeah,
big.
the thing would have to be like, it would become it starts to become absolutely inefficient. Yeah. So they could make you one, but nobody wants that. They want something little, and it just has to be quiet. Or for my purposes, it just needs to. The reason I use them. And like them, we keep them on our home defense guns, in our nightstands, my wife and I, because we want to be able to have our hearing, so it just has to be quiet enough that it's not blam, that loud noise going on, gunshot going off in a confined room. It's pretty loud. So we just want it to be hearing safe so we can still communicate with each other, talk on the phone to the police, whatever we need to do. If you have family members, be able to communicate with them. You don't have all that going off, which is handy. But they're not quiet like the movies.
That gets me thinking about what you were just saying, home safety and preparation for that. I think I would say most commonly used home safety would be handgun or shotgun usually, right?
People oftentimes go with a shotgun. That's fine. I think
less to worry about aim.
They say that we can disprove that at the range fairly quickly. Yeah. Everybody thinks the shotgun is going to be this death cannon that just sprays out death in all directions, and it's actually not like that. Yes, it shoots pellets. Yes, it will give you a pattern of pellets, but the pattern is much, much, much tighter than people think it's going to be.
Well, especially if you're in a home where you're shooting, where your target's much closer.
Especially at close distance. Right. Yeah, you're going to get a much, much tighter pattern than people think.
So where do you hold your gun at night?
We keep one in our. Okay, so that's a good question. Let me back up and just for anybody listening, my wife and I do not have any kids, so we do not have to childproof anything. You know what I mean? So we can keep our guns in the nightstand, and it's no biggie. Go out of town, we lock them in the safe, with everything else. But, so we keep a pistol, in our nightstands, and my wife keeps another pistol in her office because it's on the opposite side of the house. So, in her home office, and she works there all day. She works from home, so she keeps a pistol in there too. And that's just, how we do it. If you have kids or you have, little curious fingers that you need to protect the gun from, or protect from the gun, there are any number, and I didn't bring any to show. There are any number of devices out there, clever, quick access, but otherwise locking devices, little mini safes, if you will, that will fit in drawers, that will fit in nightstand drawers, under beds. There's a whole market for that. You can explore that, to your heart's content if you have kids, and you should if you have children around that are going to be, curious and getting their hands on stuff. You definitely want to protect from that.
Yeah, we have a safe in our closet. So again, those are some extra steps and precautions to take, which in a time of a home invasion or some place where you'd actually need it.
Where you might need it.
may not be the best thing to have. At least, it's still better than nothing, but I've seen these holsters that are locked into the bed, and like you put your hand on the actual handle or the grip, and then there's a fingerprint reader that you put on there, and then you can pull it out right away, which is pretty sweet, which is probably, the safest and most convenient way that you can do it.
But or the one with the little finger pad, the way that has the little buttons on it. You know, you put a little code in,
which is what I have, but in the closet.
Yeah, there you go. And those are great. All of those are great solutions. Like I said, you have to explore that yourself. As a gun owner and a parent, and explore those solutions and figure out what's going to work best for you.
Yeah.
I don't have an opinion on that because I don't use any of those. I have a gun safe. Everything stays in there except for the 2 or 3 guns that we keep out, if we need them.
Yeah.
And then my concealed carry gun, which goes in a drawer till I put it on.
Yeah, and now I guess in Texas with the laws, you don't even need a license for the concealed carry, right?
Correct. That is correct. In Texas, we went to a constitutional carry, so that means you don't need a concealed handgun license, or we stopped calling it that too. I forget what the term for it is now. I still call it concealed handgun license, but I think it has a different name. But still, I still think you should get one. There are any number of good reasons to have one.
A concealed carry license.
Yes, to actually get the license to carry, LTC. That's what we're calling it now. License to carry. I believe it is still a good idea to get one. Should you encounter the police in just a random traffic stop, you have that to show them. Yes, you are allowed to carry without it. Yes, you can have it in your car without it. Yes, all of those things. But this is your immediate, I've got a background check already done on me, card. Also, should you need to buy something when you go to purchase a gun, you can walk out within about 5 minutes if you have your concealed handgun license, or your license to carry, I think we're calling it, your license to carry, because they've already done a background check on you. So it's a great idea to have one. Also, just because it's legal to carry without your permit or your license to carry here in Texas, should you travel to another state that allows you to carry or that recognizes our license, and most states do. I mean, you can immediately delete the East Coast and the West Coast, but everywhere else around us, let's say you want to go to Louisiana, whatever, you're going to drive down there. You're going to drive to Florida for a vacation. You're going to go somewhere, right? Go up to Oklahoma in a cabin, whatever you're going to do. Hey, you want to pop your gun in your car and go. Well, if you have that license to carry and those other states all accept it, which all of those states do, except the Texas license to carry, now you're good to carry there too. My wife will sometimes, she doesn't do it so much anymore, but there for a while she would have to fly every once in a while for business. And same thing, she would fly to Atlanta, she would fly to Vegas for conventions and things like that. And so she would just, you can't carry it on the plane, but you can. Yeah, you check it. And then when you get there, you have your gun. And now she's, a woman traveling alone. So she, carry a concealed carry pistol with her. Take it, check it on the plane. And then as soon as you get to your hotel, take it out, put it on, good to go.
Yep.
And if you have that license to carry and all those states accept it, you can just carry on business as usual. So it's a very good idea. I recommend if you're going to get into shooting, get one.
Yeah.
My opinion.
Yeah. No, that sounds great, man. And I want to talk more about safety caring for safety, especially for women to carry to safety, and how important that is, especially people who are less able to defend themselves physically, to have the ability to defend themselves.
Yes. Yes. The great equalizer,
right.
Exactly. So shooting, the neat part about shooting is that it is 99% skill dependent, being physically large or physically small, man or woman, this or that. It doesn't really play that much of a part. I guess you could argue men can shoot bigger guns easier because we have bigger hands. Okay, whatever. But I mean, for the most part, it is just about 100% skill dependent. So it's a skill, like playing a musical instrument, right? You don't get an advantage necessarily by being this or that, right? So learning to shoot and then being able to carry a gun is fantastic if you are a smaller person, or you are not the fighter type or whatever. It is very handy. Because again, then it's all skill dependent, so if you're a shooter and you train, you have that ability. Again, you don't necessarily have to do it. It gives you, I like to say to people, it gives you the option.
Right.
Which is nice. Kind of like we were talking about with that license to carry thing. It gives you the option. You don't have to carry it every day if you don't want to.
Right.
But it is nice that should things get weird, whether it's a personal weirdness that's only affecting you and your family, or as we learned in the last couple of years, the whole place can get nutty real quick. And should you go, things are getting weird here, or if you live in a place that has rapidly deteriorating police response and increase in crime, that's a big thing now. Having the option to carry and the option to make those decisions because you have a skill set there is huge.
Yeah, and even if you
don't have to, but you have the option to do it.
The safer the neighborhood, or the more police surveillance there is, or safety in the area, still doesn't guarantee anything, because there's always you can get killed walking your doggy. Yeah, there's a response time regardless. Yeah. So
and again, you kind of touched on this earlier, brought up like a lot with the whole gun thing is personal responsibility. Yeah. So how much personal responsibility do you want to take for yourself, or how much do you want to take for your family? Yeah. Well, that's up to you. I can't tell you should or you shouldn't. That's your decision to make. But I guess I just want to let people know that there are options out there, a lot of them, but that the biggest one is, learning to use these things correctly is like kind of step one. Yeah. Get one. Yeah. Great. Learn how to use it. That's step two. Yeah, and then that starts to give you options for, okay, now I have decisions I can make. Whereas if you don't have one of these and you don't know, or you have one and don't know how to use it, we're depending on what, luck? I mean, or somebody else. Hope and faith, or kindness to strangers. I mean, what do we, just roll the dice, I guess,
Control the things you can, and
that's the name of the game with a lot of this stuff is you control what you can control. You can control whether you own or not. You can control how much you train. You can control how much you learn. You don't get to pick when you have to fight. You don't get to pick who it happens to, well, I spent a lot of money on this house, so cool. They can come for you too. It's so it's up to you, like you said, control the things you can control, and then you have the option out there.
So let's move on to some rifles, shall we?
Rifles. Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Let's do it.
We'll take a little quick pause and rearrange some stuff.
All right. Yeah.
That's fine.
All right, so what do you got? Show us what you got.
This is one of my wife's Gucci guns. She always gets the nice stuff, but that's how it is. So this is just an AR. It's short, so it's a short-barreled rifle, and it has a suppressor on it.
Sorry to interrupt. Before you start on that, let's define AR. Let's start to educate, because this can be a point of contention. Here, I will give you this.
Oh, yeah.
This can be a point of contention, or point of what a big part of controversy is in America today, and that has largely to do with what people think these are, which is what they name as ARs, which they think means assault rifle, right?
Sure.
So let's clear the name for the whole AR. Why and how we can dispel these types of fears. Well, probably won't, but we'll see.
Dispelling the fear is again, you kind of said it right there. If there's fear there, there's nothing we can do. If you're just afraid of the whole thing and don't think anybody should have anything, I don't know what to tell you.
No debate can be had.
I mean, okay, then we'll remove cars and swimming pools, and we'll just live in bubbles and be great. But no, so AR. So AR-15, which is really, I didn't bring a stock one. I don't think I own a stock one anymore. But they come in a lot of different shapes and sizes these days. But it really just describes kind of the overall pattern, which pattern of the gun, how it works, what parts it takes, all that kind of stuff. But it's just a semi-auto rifle. We talked about that earlier a little bit. Full auto, semi-auto.
And AR stands for
originally for Armalite. It's the company that first
not
came
assault
up with
rifle.
the thing. No, not assault rifle.
And the term assault rifle was actually created by
kind of co-opted. There is such a thing as an assault rifle. So like the military likes to categorize things so that they can write about them in training materials, right? So they can discuss, hey, this is an entire group of things that we're talking about, right? So the assault rifle does exist as a term. And so it has certain characteristics, and the following 50 guns fall into that category, right?
Such as?
Your M16, your M4, your AK-47, your G3. The list is a mile long.
Do they
right?
have to be fully automatic in order
They
to
have to have a selector switch.
to either?
So that means a selector switch is this. Well, this is a safety, but like a selector switch would be this guy, but it would have a third position. So instead of just safe and fire, you would have a third position to go to, which would give you multiple rounds per one pull of the trigger. So I pull the trigger down and it goes brrr.
Usually 3 shots.
You could have a burst function, which gives you the 3 shots, or you could have just full auto.
Full auto. Right.
Yeah, where it's just going to fire till it runs out of ammo or till I let the trigger go.
So from a technicality standpoint, assault rifles need to fall into the category of
needs
being
to have-
either burst fire or fully
It
automatic.
needs to have some kind of auto fire in there. And then there are a bunch of other characteristics that define it. They have to be medium-sized rifles, medium-sized caliber, blah, blah, blah.
It's good to define these things because a lot of people use the term. It's termed now.
Like I said, it's been co-opted into meaning everything we don't like.
Right.
Scary black rifles, yeah, and they're not that scary. They're not that powerful in the grand scheme of things. In fact, by definition, they have a relatively small caliber. But this is just an example of one that we brought out here. So this is one of my wife's guns. But so it's on the smaller side. Typically with women, it's really height dependent. But typically with most women, the 16-inch gun gets a little long for them. Some women can shoot it fine, but a lot of them feel like it's too much weight out at the end and it's getting away from them. So
16 inches standard.
Yeah, 16-inch barrel. Yeah. So and I brought one of those too.
And the barrel show us where the barrel goes from where to where.
Right. So the barrel goes from right in about here, right to the end, and then here we'll take the suppressor off of here, so we can.
That's the old suppressor. No more pew pew.
Yeah, now it goes blam blam. But yeah, so this is a very, very short gun. It's a 10.3 inch barrel, which is I guess these days relatively common size. But she runs the 10.3 fine. She runs it fine because it's shorter, so it brings the rifle into the center of her center of gravity a lot better. Mm-hmm. She doesn't feel like it's all the weight's getting away from her out at the end. So
it's also the shorter size might make it more versatile too. Would you say?
I don't think so. It not necessarily. It's really just fits to her. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It fits her better. Just running a shorter gun works better for her. So, for me, I actually have a hard time. I kind of got long arms, so I actually don't shoot super short guns all that well. Mm-hmm. They look nifty, but it's too little. I need them a little bit longer, and I shoot 14 and a halves and things like that a lot better. But so as short as I go, I like an 11 and a half inch barrel is kind of the shortest I like to go. So it's really, like I said, just more of a fitment to you.
And so to be clear, this does not have a selector switch. It's purely just and let's again, aside from the price associated with owning a fully automatic, are there any other restrictions in owning besides the price?
Yeah, you have to buy a stamp. It's go through the same process you have to go through to get these is the same process you go through to get
a suppressor.
To get a suppressor or to get a short barrel rifle. You pay the same tax stamp. You pay an extra $200 to the government for your permission slip. Your mother, may I have this gun in the size that I would like? Yes, if you pay extra
for the shorter barrel,
mm-hmm.
or for
a short barreled rifle, for a short barreled shotgun. Brought one of my wife's short barreled shotguns as well. The same reason. Full-size shotguns tend to get away from her. She gets a little bit shorter. She runs them fine.
So anybody can still purchase a fully automatic weapon if they wanted to?
Anybody who lives in a state that allows it. Right. Yeah, so again, you can immediately remove your usual suspect states. Right. But yeah, in Texas, you can buy one if you can afford one, or find one someone who's willing to sell one to you, because they limited how many are out there. Right. So the ones that are in existence pre-1986 are allowed to be bought and sold between each other, once you go through the paperwork and all that. But there are no new ones. So it instantly made all the ones that are out there collector's items. And so that's why they're so expensive.
So new ones, as in they're still being manufactured but not being used by civilians. Anything past the year 1986 is considered to be illegal just because of a...
Can't have. Yeah, you can't buy it no matter how much money you got.
Interesting.
Now, police department can.
Right.
But you can't. They can have one.
And I don't want to talk about that in a little bit. Well, so this
it's good for them. It's good for the King's men, but not for you.
So like this, you have to pull the trigger every time you want to fire. You got to pull the trigger just like you would a handgun. The point of contention with these specifically is the capacity of the magazine. So let's talk about your usually, right? Let's talk about that. Again, I want to cover all these angles because
if you must,
because
I like a lot of chances.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
well, first of all, your handguns can range anywhere from like roughly nine bullets per magazine.
Let's say
to
like
18
a normal range might be on a handgun, something like for the 1911 folks, we'll stick the number 7 in there. 7.
Or Desert Eagles.
7 all the way up to, a lot of modern magazines will hold 20-ish, 20, 22, something like that.
Yeah.
17, something like that, is a pretty common number. 15 for medium-sized guns, something like that.
And what about a rifle?
So the standard magazine is 30, which you should never load 30. We load 29. So it takes 30, but never put 30 in. But anyway, yeah.
Why is that?
I don't want to get overly technical, but it's a pain in the butt to load a fully loaded 30-round mag with a closed bolt. And so once we get on the range, you'll see why that's important. But so just for people at home, don't put 30 in your AR magazine, put 29. Yeah, so you want to have as many chances as you can get, right? And people are like, well, you should only need one bullet. I'm like, you've been watching the movies again where you shoot one time and they fall over, doesn't work that way. We need to put several bullets into people usually to stop them. And we need to do it quickly, and we need to do it in the most efficient and effective manner possible. Yeah. The most efficient and effective manner currently possible, because there's no phase plasma rifles yet, is one of these for most people
in the 40-watt range.
I'll take one in a 38-watt range if they got it. But I'll take what they got. But so this is currently just one of the easiest platforms to use, and easy to say here. I could show you on the range. Much easier to get hits with one of these than it is with a pistol for a number of reasons. But yeah, people who want to restrict magazines and want to restrict this and restrict that is usually they're grasping at, there's got to be a way to somehow make this all safer. If only we could just, and the answer is no. Like, that's like saying, there's no way to do it. And what you do in the meantime is take away everybody else's ability to have the most efficient and effective tool that they can have.
Right. And I want to come back to this, because this, after we cover this, I want to talk about personal accountability, personal responsibility, and how that fits into the Second Amendment. As far as, like you mentioned this, the recoil on these are a lot less. Like I fire them
very mild.
For me, I much prefer firing handguns at the range. It's just more fun, right? We talked about it being more visceral. But as far as accuracy, this is
hands down.
Yeah. And
hands down.
And so, like you said, if you're looking at it from the angle of somebody who's trying to hurt somebody, of course it's going to be more beneficial to them. But the point is that the rights of law-abiding citizens aren't meant to be deduced or trampled on because other people are abusing it.
Well, I mean, this other guy raped somebody, so they want to cut my balls off. I mean, that's kind of what they're saying. That's not how that works. You want to own the most efficient and effective tool possible. And when we start restricting features on this, features being no this or no that, or lower capacity magazine, or no collapsible or adjustable stocks, or blah, blah, blah. All you're doing is taking away efficiencies that make it what it is. Mm-hmm. And we start reducing those efficiencies. It's like, okay, you just ripped the power steering out of my car. We want to have the best experience we can, because again, we control what we can control, right? So I want the most effective, efficient tool for me. And again, you should probably bring my wife in here sometime, and to get a female shooter's perspective. But I'll tell you for her, if you put a rifle, a pistol, and a shotgun, she shoots all three. And if you tell her grab a gun right now, she's going to an AR immediately. Like, I mean, she's a carbine gal. She's going to grab that, this gun or one of her others in 2 seconds, if that's the case, because it's the most efficient tool. And we can maybe even film that possibly, but getting new shooters out there, if we shoot rifles, pistols, and shotguns all in the same day, and at the end of the day say, okay, which one of these do you like shooting the best? Which do you feel most confident with? 100 out of 100.
I like handguns.
Yeah, you like handguns, but if I said you have to fight right now, what are you going to grab?
Oh, the rifle.
Right now.
Down.
Yeah, it's instant. It's immediately apparent when you get on the range.
Which one's
and
more
start
efficient?
shooting. Yeah, which of these? Again, why we're not trying to make our lives difficult. Right. The situation is all that you're put in where you need one of these is already difficult.
Right. You need to put yourself in the best position possible to defend yourself.
Yes, exactly.
So, so. Can you run me through the components of the rifle?
Sure.
You did for the handgun?
Sure. Yeah. Scoot forward. So, grip, stock.
Actually, yeah.
Oh,
This is
sorry.
good.
You can see it right here.
That's good.
So here, hold on. So, gun is nice and unloaded. So you've got your stock right here, your grip, trigger, safety. This is your magazine welds, where your magazine goes. Remember to take magazines, not clips. You've got your rail, which is just this little tubey thing that goes down the end. Your barrel, which underneath here.
And what is the purpose of the rail?
To give you something to not burn your hands, because the barrels get hot. Something to, this little metal guy that runs all the way down is just a covering. You got your, and then your barrel, which is underneath there, obviously. And then this is just a muzzle device, right? And they make a million different ones of these that do different things. This is just a standard flash hider and takes the can. So, and then, again,
the can being the suppressor.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, suppressor.
You get that lingo.
Yeah. And then I like to put lights on everything that we're going to consider, something we're going to actually use.
Yeah.
We want to have a light on it. So, and this just activates the light.
And the sight is a dot as well, right?
Yeah. So this is a red dot. This happens to be an EOTech. My wife prefers that over other styles of sights. And there's not a right or wrong there. Any of the good brands will do. She just happens to prefer them. So but a red dot sight. And then these are just little backup iron sights. Should your dot fail, you have backup irons, but
just in case.
Yeah, just in case. Some other doodads. This one happens to have a folder attached to it, so you can fold the stock. Yeah.
Did you build this one?
Yes.
You essentially, it's similar to building your own computer, kind of. Essentially,
you decide what you want. You buy component parts.
You buy the best parts, put them together.
Assemble, or buy the parts that you think are going to work for you. Yeah.
So rifles are standard like that, where you can find a lot of components, whereas like handguns are very different, right?
The AR platform, or the AR-15 and the AR these days, a lot of us have just taken to calling it the AR platform, because it's basically become so ubiquitous that everything is kind of built off it. Does this thing take AR parts? Yes. Okay. Well, that means we can start swapping out parts and build it, or change an existing rifle that you already have and perhaps don't like anymore if you bought perhaps a plain Jane or a off-the-rack gun, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
So it's modular in that sense.
Yeah, so you can change it to suit your needs, which is one of the other many convenient things about it. So you can say, hey, I don't like this trigger, or I want to do this or that or the other to it. Knock yourself out. Mild to wild, you can go nuts with it.
So can you run me through the brands, your favorite brands for each component, would you say? Maybe your top one or two.
That's probably going to get super
technical.
I want to stay away from that one, just because.
Or is there one place that you like where that you if you had to pick your favorite maker of parts? I know that.
I guess it depends on the parts, because different people make different parts, right? So triggers, I like Geisley triggers, hands down, no two ways about it. There are other great triggers out there, but a lot of these things become personal preference.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
I like XYZ brand.
It's like,
Coke or Pepsi.
It's like the piano as well. It's
Bud Light, Miller Lite, whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you're going to have your favorite thing, and okay, as long as it's a good quality one, I'm sure it'll work fine for you. Right. As you become a more experienced shooter, you'll start to grow a taste for certain things, right? I like this, I like that, I don't like the following. and that's normal. That's kind of part of becoming a more experienced shooter is you'll start to learn those things, what you like, what you don't. And there are people who are brand loyalists. I'm not a brand loyalist necessarily. I kind of pick from, any of the parts that I need that are available to me to build what I need for what that rifle's supposed to do.
Right.
And this is sort of a little, very small jack of all trades kind of basic rifle, just light sight, got a can on it, sling, ready to go, And we added a folding stock just so she can fold it up a little smaller, put it in a bag.
Now, can we do a quick compare it and put it next to the AK? The AK that you have?
An AK or I wonder if it should do like the full size 16-inch thing.
Yeah,
See the difference between like a full size one.
Yeah, you want me to hand it?
I'm not sure. Check that tan bag maybe. Looking for a tannish long rifle. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Yep. Just grab that on out there. So, yeah. And we're back. So yeah, just for like a size comparison, because we talked about this rifle being shorter than your standard 16-inch rifle.
I like the girth of this one. It's girthy though. It's got a good.
We all like what we like. Yeah, so this is just a kind of a plain, more or less plain Jane, 16-inch gun, nothing fancy about it.
30 magazine capacity as well, like typically. Right?
Yeah, all ARs, and there are different size magazines out there, but yeah, your standard AR magazine is a 30 round mag.
And so the good thing is that it's a lot more, like for example, let's go back to the handguns. Glock magazine works with Glock handguns only. So
sure, if you buy a SIG or some other brand,
you need the magazines for that.
You need magazines for that specific thing.
Whereas the AR based platform, you have the magazines that are interchangeable, which is
correct.
Great.
Yeah, from any of the manufacturers, that are out there, and there are plenty of people that make great magazines out there. So you get ones that you like, and off you go.
It's funny because when you look at this, the size doesn't look that much different. It's just all in the barrel, right? It's just that extra.
Correct. Yeah, from yes, you are correct. From here back, everything is the same.
Yeah.
It's how long the barrel length is, because you can't make any of this in the back shorter. It's fixed. It's not going to change. Where you're going to get your length is in how long the barrel is. So. So it's not that much shorter, but it makes a difference. Like I said, for my wife, it makes a big difference in how much it's getting away from her.
Right.
Remember that your average rifle, your standard plain Jane rifle, doesn't even matter what kind it is, AR, hunting rifle, you name it. 99% of them were made for your average North American male, right? So anybody between 5'7" and 6'3", can pick it up and go, it'll fit me. Well, yeah, of course it'll fit you. It was designed for it to fit you. So anybody who's under that starts to have problems. You know what I mean?
It's a little long.
Yeah, starts to get long, and the weight starts to get away from them, and their how well they can handle the gun starts to change dramatically. So especially after more than 2 seconds, or after, more than a minute of shooting, it starts to really, really make itself apparent. So like I said, for my wife who's 5'4",
by that you mean the accuracy,
well, and just in your ability to handle the gun, how well you can move around with it, transition targets, all the other stuff that you're going to do on the range. How you're going to move that thing. If it's all getting away from you the whole time, it starts to show itself pretty quickly. So that's one of those things it's hard to kind of describe it necessarily, but at the range, it'll become apparent right away.
Bullet size. Let's talk about that for.
Talk about
it. So what is the size of measurement for?
So they come in. So 5.56 is the military NATO millimeter metric size. 223 is the caliber. So they are technically different, but for all intents and purposes, they're the same.
They're interchangeable.
They're interchangeable in any modern rifle.
So
yes.
5.56.
They are technically different. 5.56 has a hair more gunpowder in it.
That's 5.6 millimeters.
5.56.
5.56 millimeters.
Around. So a tiny little bullet.
And the other one is
0.223 of an inch.
So almost a quarter of an inch in diameter.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so and it's very small. If you hold it up, it's they're actually quite small.
Do you have any?
I do.
Yeah, let's check one out. These are the long and pointy ones, yes.
They are long and pointy. Yeah, there we go.
So double stack looks like, right?
Yeah, so they're going to be staggered all the way down. That's how you get 30 of them in this much space. But, yeah, there you go.
Thank you, sir.
And you can just, just strip one. Yeah, just kind of poke it forward. Yeah, pop it out of there. There you go. Yeah. So this is your standard training round.
A lot more gunpowder, it looks like.
Yeah, so the bullet is very, very small.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you look at it, it's quite small.
Still bigger or pointier, and I guess a little longer than
longer,
the.
But overall, as far as bullets go, it's quite small. And all the rest of this is just gunpowder. So it's a very small bullet that's traveling very, very quickly,
very fast. Now they're not hollow points, so
no.
So are rifle rounds hollow points?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yeah. So our magazines, I think I dropped the mags or left them all at home when I was packing all these guns up, but to bring them over. But yeah. So this is just a training round.
So it's the same thing as the handgun. Typically, the ones that you fire
use full
for
metal
jacket
for shooting at the range and training. Yeah, and then for your home stuff, you'll buy a more expensive hollow point round that will open up and do its thing. Yeah.
And obviously hollow points are a lot more expensive too.
They are. Yeah, you're going to pay more. It's higher quality manufacturing, higher quality gunpowder. There's a whole list of requirements that they put into there, but they're trying to make you the best round they can.
Right.
You know.
So as far as the damage that a hollow point round from a rifle, even though it is smaller in diameter,
is between a pistol and a rifle. It's night and day. Yeah. The amount of power, if you want to call it that comes out of this thing, that comes out of a rifle, any rifle, is enormous compared to what a handgun can do.
And that's because of the size of the casing, right? How much
gunpowder is in there?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and is there? I don't know if there's a way to quantify, but the speed at which it travels, do you know? Versus a handgun?
So it's going to depend on your barrel length. So anywhere from, let's say, 2,500 feet per second up to 3,200 feet per second, right? And I say that depends on your barrel length. So the longer this when it gets fired, right? You pull the trigger, hammer comes down, firing pin hits this little guy right here, hits your primer, sets off the gunpowder, and the bullet spins down the barrel and comes on out, right? Remember, just the bullet.
Right.
So this bullet is traveling as it's spinning down this barrel. This exploding hot gunpowder is pushing it fast, right? So as this thing is moving, if you have a shorter barrel, it's not going to have as much time in there to burn all of that gunpowder. So it's not going to be traveling as fast. Now, are you going to notice? No, not really. Right. If you were the kind of person you're going to go start shooting long range stuff, you'll absolutely notice. For most people's needs, you'll never notice. So you want to get the barrel length that fits your needs and fits you as a shooter. So there are some, like I said, and I'm trying not to get super technical with it, but there are differences in gunpowders and speeds and all that kind of stuff, but that starts to get into the nitty gritty, finer minutia stuff. And for most people, that's just not going to matter. You're going to have hollow point training round, put it in there, off you go, and that'll get most of what you need done. No problems.
So your other rifle that you brought is an AK-47, but it is, when people hear that name, they automatically think, Russian fully automatic, kind of weapon.
Bad guy weapon of choice.
Bad guy weapon of choice from the movies,
Absolutely.
right?
Well, they're not wrong.
But
they're not wrong.
Right.
They're not wrong. They're not wrong.
But it's essentially you have the stock of an AK-47 on there, but what?
The one I brought has a bunch of upgrades or American-made parts to upgrade from the classic crappy Soviet design from post-World War II. That thing was designed a million years ago, and it is what it is. The AK, I have to preface this for any of the gun people who might be listening. I'm not an AK guy. I own one or two because you have to, but I don't like them, so I don't prefer them. But I did get one and I kind of upgraded it and basically you spend extra money trying to turn it into one of these, trying to modernize it, drag that thing kicking and screaming into the modern world.
Right.
Because it doesn't want to go, and you have to make it. It wants to be what it is. Peasant rifle from,
Good.
It's good. It's reliable. It's not accurate.
If it doesn't work, you can always hit them.
You can always hit them with it. That's right. And we need to be able to make a lot of them cheaply so that we can arm the peasants and defend Leningrad.
Real quick, what is the part of the component where the selector switch is? What part of the component or gun do we call that where you enable or disable the fully automatic function?
This is the safety, right? Safety or selector switch, whichever term you prefer to call it, right?
Would that be considered the mechanism or what?
The safety, right?
Yeah.
So this thing, no fire, right? Because it's on safe. Switch it down, now it goes bang. In this case goes click. But that's all there is to it. It's just so it's on the part of the lower receiver. Some people will call it fire control group, and that starts to get super technical and gun nerdy. But that's your grip, trigger, and safety all combined, right? Because that's how you're going to control the gun and fire the gun.
That makes sense.
But it's not super important for you can just say safety and everybody knows.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think for that, as far as how to handle this and do it, we'll do that on the range because it's a bigger mechanism.
Hard to do here.
Yeah. Are there any other cool little components or anything like that? Any grenades that you brought?
No, not allowed to have grenades. No, that's kind of a no-no.
Why not?
No, they get upset about that. We can look at this filthy, disgusting
AK.
Filthy, disgusting AK. Look at that; it just wants to bang into things. So again.
Folding or collapsible stock, is it called?
Folding. So, AKs come in a lot of different flavors, man. And I am admittedly not an AK expert. There are people who can get all into, no, this one's an Egyptian Mahdi, and this one's a Romanian.
Usually it's wood, right?
Wood, or they make metal ones. They make triangle style ones. There's a million flavors of AK because a million different countries ended up making them for however long. I think they're still doing it now. But
what is AK? Do you know what AK stands for, by the way?
Automatic Kalashnikov rifle. Yeah, something like that.
Just to be clear, this is not automatic either.
No, God, no. I can't afford it. So an AK has a charging handle on the wrong side of the gun. You'll love it as a left-hander.
Hold that up a little bit.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, so we will bring our charging handle back. And you'll note it doesn't lock.
It loads around in the chamber.
Yeah, exactly, and cycles the gun. So, the safety, if we're going to call it that, on an AK is this god awful lever. Over here.
That's convenient.
Yes, well, for peasant with winter mittens on, it works great. The Soviets didn't care. They weren't interested in ergonomics. They were interested in producing a lot of these quickly and cheaply, and they did. So it does what it does well, And I put down the AK kind of half jokingly because, admittedly, I'm not a fan of them, but there are some attributes to it.
So show me what kind of surgery you did to this bad boy. What'd you do to it? What remains of this
everything
cyborg?
That I could. We changed the grip. We changed the trigger. We changed a few of the internal springs. We put a rail on the top so that we could put an optic on it instead of using the god-awful peasant iron sights. We changed the... gave it a foregrip here, and a grippy in the front, which is nice. Other than that, and we put a bigger charging handle on it because the one that it comes with is like short. This little nubbin. Yeah, it's awful. That's about it, I think.
That's it.
That's it. We just basically tried to make it not an AK.
Frankenstein.
Yeah. As much of a not... Or modernize an AK. Like I said, you have to drag these things into the modern century, kicking and screaming. And I never bothered putting lights or anything like that on it because, for me, this is just really more of a range toy than anything I would ever pick up and use.
So, yeah, man. Thanks for showing me all these things, man. We'll talk about more bigger picture stuff now. But so we were talking about this earlier about like the restrictions of guns and what do you say to somebody who who thinks all guns should be restricted and be made illegal, or like
I would question their sanity as an adult. I mean, like you.
A lot of people would say you're crazy. What do you need a gun for? Right? That's the argument.
What do you not? I mean, show me. I like to play a game with these people. Name a group of people who have been disarmed that it's worked out well for. I'll wait.
Yeah.
Name a group of people. Throughout history that have been forcibly disarmed that it went well for. I can't name one.
And I don't think people understand that. They are so comfortable living their lives in thinking
in their comfort bubble.
That listen, we all live comfortable lives, but
sure.
I think studying history is the number one thing that, and it doesn't take a lot of studying. It's just common sense to know that if you can defend yourself, you stand a lot better chance to defend yourself. I mean, it's just common sense.
I think it's even bigger than that. Like once you get past the personal safety and the defending your family thing, just bigger picture, there's just so much out there that just laughs in the face of the notion of, oh, I won't need anything. Oh, you won't? Okay. I mean, like, and again, we in the shooting world don't demand that you own something. We don't demand that you go forth and purchase guns and come train with us. We don't demand that you serve in the military. We don't demand, like some countries do, we don't demand any of that. It is an option for you. It's a choice that you need to make, and you need to make it an informed one, and then, do all the things you need to do to make that a solid choice. You need to, be able to train, be a responsible person, all these things. That being said, this idea that we're just going to turn them all into paper clips tomorrow, I mean, look at all the places that have boatloads of gun control. Right. How's that work out?
Right. Chicago.
Well, let's go outside the country. Let's leave our country alone, because they'll say, well, that's because you can go down to Texas and buy them easily. That's what those people will always say. Okay, let's go to a place where you can't have any guns, like Mexico. How's that working out for them? It's a shit show. It's a shit show where they're just murdering the hell out of each other. Now you're saying, well, that's guns and crime and gangs and cartels. Okay. I mean, like, I don't care what you want to call it. How about all the warlords of Africa? Do you think they're big fans of letting the peasants be armed? I mean, how about we go back to the kings and queens of Europe? No peasants shall be armed, ever. If you want to get nittier and grittier, all of your folks had to turn in your firearms in the 30s. Jews. Let's go. Come on, hand them over. Well, why? Just hand them over. You don't need that. Right. Next, it's get on the boxcar. Next, it's and
a lot of the arguments, at least for Americans, for who are anti-gun, their argument is, well, if the army really wanted to take over and control your rights, your guns couldn't do anything to stop them. And I completely disagree with that. 300 million guns.
We just spent 20 years fighting people in sandals with AKs.
Right, exactly.
With not an airplane to their name, not a tank. How'd that go?
Yeah.
We finally got on our plane and left. I mean,
right, I completely disagree with that statement.
Yeah, it's nonsense. The other statement there, or the other reaction I have to that one, that people who say silly things like that, they don't really understand. They've never been around the military, been in the military, obviously. Who is the military composed of? I mean, it's made of people that live here. Like there's not this hive mind that says we're going to do this, and then every single soldier in the military will instantly go, yes, let's take over the country. Like, I mean, that's not going to happen. That's not how the American military works. It's just not.
Well, so then at the end of the day, it comes back to what we talked about earlier: is the personal responsibility. Is people are scared of guns. This is my take on it. People are scared of guns because they don't understand them, and they see people, crazy people, evil people, using them to kill innocent people, to kill children, for various reasons. Shoot up schools, and rather than say, let's remove it from the hands of people who are responsible. Let's take it away from everybody, which again, you mentioned earlier, which doesn't make any sense. Now, again, we've talked about this before. My viewpoint on this and a lot of people's is the decline of the family, the decline of the family unit, in my opinion. That's my opinion, because at the end of the day, what it comes down to is personal responsibility. And how is personal responsibility taught? It is usually taught by parents, right? It's not the government's job to teach people. It's the government's, no, it's the parents' job to teach their children. It's the parents' job to teach them personal responsibility, teach them safety, teach them everything they need to do to fend for themselves in the world. It's not, the government is not there to do that for you. And people seem to have this dependence on the government. And the more I read, the older I get, the more I realize that is the exact opposite of what we want and what we need, and that's exactly what the founders of this country realized, and why the Constitution wrote it down. Right? Yeah. Exactly. Like
they just came from kings and queens.
Exactly.
And they said, let's don't go back there in a big fat hurry. Let's try to keep this like this, where and it's funny that you say that, because I mean, look at the push now as people have realized how, in many respects, how that can kind of get away from them. Look at the push now. Oh, parents control what teachers teach our kids, not the education system. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's this huge
backlash.
Yeah, big backlash, big push. Oh, we want to be in control of our school boards. We want to be in control of. Oh, so you don't want Big Brother doing everything. It's like the idea is coming full circle in lots of different little places. And this is just one of them, but
especially as government, especially the executive branch of government that has gotten so big over the last, 150 years, 100 years, especially
with routine line steps,
with new bureaus, new bureaus, new offices opening, just
let's create something else that controls something else.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Till we have it all.
Yeah. So, when Jefferson, Franklin, when they wrote, and Adams, whoever, when they wrote the Constitution, they were the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, right? And again, what I would akin those two today would be a Federalist would probably be a Republican, and an Anti-Federalist would probably be a Libertarian. That would be my viewpoint of what what it would be like. You had the Constitution being written, and then the Anti-Federalists were like, listen, we're not going to ratify this. We're not going to ratify this Constitution because there are no provisions that are more specific. It tells us how the government should run, but it doesn't tell us anything about our rights. Hence the Bill of Rights, correct,
being added,
which came in 91, I think 1791. But so I started reading. I don't know if you've read the Federalist Papers, but I started, again, amazingly worded writing. Like when you read the writings of these people, you're just like, wow, I wish half people could
speaks to us today.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. But essentially, it was a way for the Federalists to try to influence or plead to the people to ratify the Constitution, and they published them in various newspapers. But it wasn't until the Bill of Rights, the first, the Second Amendments, the first 8 amendments, the first big 8, I think it was 9, I forget. But it wasn't until the Bill of Rights came around that the Constitution was actually adopted. Hey, now we are America. It was written in 1776, but it wasn't until 20 or close to 20 years later.
Everything took a while.
Yeah. Well, there was a Revolutionary War. But yeah. So, so my point is the Anti-Federalists wanted these provisions because of where they came from. And it was even more than what the Federalists said, okay, we are completely creating a new government. This isn't going to happen again. And yet the Anti-Federalists were like, no, this is not enough. And so this is, the reason for the Bill of Rights. And so when we talk about the Second Amendment, and I'll read it because, it's super short, and this is interesting, right? A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Mm-hmm. Why such few words?
Because at the time, I don't think it was a complicated subject.
Right.
You know what I mean? It just wasn't a complicated subject. I mean, oftentimes we say today, and it's true, that a gun is a tool, right? It's a tool.
Right.
Back then, if you were basically a frontiersman, I mean, it would have been a daily tool for you, or you know what I mean? And so I think it just, they didn't have to, they didn't think they would ever have to explain it any further than that. And people say, well, they were talking about muskets. Well, this is akin to the musket of their day. It was the common ubiquitous rifle. This is a common ubiquitous rifle today. So it's apples to apples. It's well, they could never have imagined. Yeah, they could have. I mean, dudes were rolling around with cannons, their own personal cannons during the Civil War.
And again,
you know,
even if they didn't, it doesn't matter, right?
At the end of the day, yes, you never get away from this because it goes around in a circle. Well, there's got to be some level of control we can put on that makes it safe. That starts infringing and then turns into this snowball that turns into let's take them all, which turns back into that's why we needed them in the first place. And you go round and around a circle, and then you toss on top of that, well, personal responsibility, and you can't get away from that, and there's no way to legislate it safer,
right?
And you can't pass a law to make it safe.
So people, who have, I've used it before, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right?
Or people who, a few bad ones. I think at this point they know.
Yeah. Well, I would say your average person who is, say, anti-gun, who wants it to, who is scared of them and wants them to be
average
safe.
soccer mommy, who wants them all rounded up, melted down into paper clips.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. She would just, or they would be willing to cede their rights or to give up their rights because it seems like the safest thing to do. Put your trust in the government, right? Mm-hmm. But again, the personal responsibility thing is what it always comes back down to.
If you're willing to trade your freedom for safety, you deserve neither. It's
right.
You're going to get neither. It's you can go round and round with all this, and it at the end of the day, you're not going to get away from that. And,
right. Well, take like a license, like the idea of saying, oh, let's make guns safe by making sure that you need a driver. Well, first of all,
how about a marriage license?
Yeah, you need a marriage license. You need a driver's license to drive.
Approval.
Again, we're talking about the difference between a privilege and a right. First of all, so that's just purely arguing just the definition of what the difference between a privilege and a right. One's not in the Constitution. Mm-hmm. That aside. It might go in with good intentions, thinking that a registration or or some sort of registration for guns would be a good thing. But in your view, because you've explained it to me eloquently, much more than I could, what are the downsides of that?
Oh, numerous. Well, first of all, if we're saying that if we somehow register the guns or we do something of that nature, that somehow magically that'll make everything safer. Well, none of the criminals that are running around committing crimes right now have registered guns, nor do they have legally purchased guns. Very few of them. I mean, you could argue a few mass shooters ran off and bought guns and then decided to go commit mass shootings. Okay, fair enough. That's a very limited amount of people, though. We're talking about your average criminals. They're not buying their guns. They're not going through background checks. They're not going to care. They're going to continue to get their guns the way they always have. Black markets, steal them, whatever. However they do it. All that does is affect us. So that's the whole. Trying to go down that road doesn't do anything except hand more power over to the central authorities, and we've seen how that goes. Oh, we're not going to take your guns. I just need you to register them. Okay, what does that mean exactly? Tell us who you are, where you live, and what you have, and the serial numbers. Well, why do you need to know all that? Well, we just need to know. We just need to know for your safety.
Just in case.
Okay, yeah, just in case. So tomorrow, when we come knock on the fucking door, give them over. And you say, well, that could never happen. It happened recently in Australia. I say relatively recently, but Australia pulled that scam. They said, you've got to register all your firearms, and then not only that do you have to register them, but you've got to store them at a shooting range in a secured locker that you purchase from them, right? Well, then once everyone had complied with that little rule, they just sent the police over there to round them all up out of the stored lockers at the shooting range. They said, no more guns. We got you.
Do you know what year? Or
sometime in the 90s, I believe. This scheme, you go round and round with this, and yet at the same time, all of the Kingsmen may have. I mean, what did the IRS just do? We need to hire 80,000 armed people. Why do you need to arm them? Department of Homeland Security needs, yada, yada, yada. We need to arm all these people with rifles. Why are you all arming yourselves with evil, scary black rifles? Oh, because they're really effective and efficient, and we like them. That's the same reason we like them. Right. It's the most efficient tool available. All
right. So, what was I saying? Oh, I was going to ask, how do you know how gun laws have changed? I know there have been a lot, but would you say since the Bill of Rights?
Oh, well,
when have gun laws changed? Like the big ones, as far as
the
you
big
know?
ones.
Yeah.
So I would say there's going to be some stuff from the 1800s that I just skip right over because whatever. The big ones in modern times are the NFA Act of 1934, right? So that was put in place to deal with the crime of the mobsters, the Al Capones, Bugsy Malones, all those guys, famous gangsters that they created by banning moonshine or, banning alcohol.
Booze, yeah.
So you created this mess. These guys, a lot of them came back from World War I, having just, been through quite a bit of violence and then decided, okay, this is not a big deal. I can do a lot of violence if it makes me a lot of money because you idiots ban booze. So anyway, they proceed to commit lots of violence, famously, I guess. And they said, we've got to do something. So they said, so the NFA Act of 1934 is what banned short guns, short shotguns, full auto, suppressors, and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Go through those again.
Short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, suppressors, full auto, and a whole host of other things. Wow. And that's where they imposed the $200 tax stamp, right? So I got to pay the government an extra $200 to get one of these on top of, I call it the permission slip, the mother may I. Mother may I? Can I have one of these? Absolutely not. If I pay you extra money, can I have one? Of course you can. Did
that really stop the mafia from?
Well, the mob doesn't stop anything.
That's what I'm saying. So,
right.
Is it,
right.
could they still be manufactured? They were still manufactured or not?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if they're still being manufactured,
yes. Then the FBI went through the business of hunting them down. But what did away with most of that was getting rid of the banning of the booze.
Right.
So, but remember that $200 today is not a big deal, right? Not really. It's more of a nuisance. $200 in 1934 was several times the cost of the gun.
Right.
So it was prohibitive on purpose. It was expensive. They made it where only the very, very wealthy could have. So, okay, so that's a game. So that was the big one. That was in 1934. That was the first biggie. Going down the line, things didn't change for a while. Then 1986 comes along. That's when they said, no more new full autos. You can keep everything that's in existence, but we're going to grandfather all that in, but no more new full autos. That came in 86. Then you have I want to say it was...
What was the cause for that? Like the mafia was the cause for the 34, but what about...
Ronald Reagan signed that.
Surprising.
No, I don't know how far we want to get into this, but I have problems with lots of people. But Ronald Reagan signed it with the NRA support. The NRA backed it, they said, because they didn't care about black rifles back then. That was the trade that they gave the Democrats for being able to hunt on public land. They said, if you let us hunt our deers on public land, we will let you ban all the machine guns in the world.
Interesting.
So they said, done deal, and they did that. So that was 86. Then I believe it was 91. I'm just going off memory here, but 91, George Bush, another Republican, George Bush I, decided to ban imports. That's when you could no longer import anything that they didn't approve of. So no black rifles could be imported.
You say black rifles.
Anything nifty. These black rifles we describe as anything that's not a wood-stocked single-shot hunting rifle or bolt-action hunting rifle.
Okay. So a semi-automatic rifle.
Anything nifty. Anything that you might actually want to own that's not for shooting birds or deers. That you would ever want to own that might be useful. They said you can't have. It can't be imported, right? So no foreign stuff. So that they said it's got to be, yeah. So that created the whole industry of, all these foreign companies started opening up plants in the United States. So we'll just manufacture it in the United States.
Circumventing the laws, man.
Right. But that was I believe 91. That was the import ban. Then, of course, famously 94, Bill Clinton gave us the assault weapons ban. It's the one that Biden keeps running around saying, I was part of that. I bet he was. So they banned all the assault rifles, assault weapons, from 1994 to 2004. Now, ban is a funny word. It doesn't mean what you think it means or what everybody thinks it means. It means they said you can absolutely keep what you've got, and anything new manufactured has to have the following features removed. And so all of the gun companies just said, oh, you listed 5 features. okay, we'll remove some of the features. And then is it legal? Yep. Okay. So we'll just remove some of the features.
What were some of the
features we like? So part of the assault weapons ban was no bayonet lug. Stop laughing, Pierre. This is serious business. It saves lives. People are being killed with bayonets, apparently. We're charging over the top. Over the top, boys! Fix bayonets! We're going to charge!
Oh my God. Okay.
You can't make up the stupid. It's none of my rifles have, actually technically that one does because it's a filthy AK, but none of my ARs have bayonet lugs because I run a full-length rail. Bayonet lug is this little nubbin of metal that's underneath here, or would be underneath here on a traditional AR. So they just ground it off with a little grinding wheel. Cut it off. Is it fine now? Yeah, no. They said no flash hiders. Flash hiders are apparently evil. So
flash hider.
This 3-pronged device is one of many designs, but it's a flash hider.
It hides the flash, right? Okay.
Technically. So if we go back to this is not a flash hider. This is a compensator. Can I have a compensator? Yeah, it's not a flash hider. So we just put one of these on. Then you can have it, So that's just another example of the dumb. They said no collapsible or adjustable stocks, right? Because this, being able to adjust the length of pull to your shoulder and so that the rifle can fit you better, is apparently extra evil and makes the rifle very dangerous. So the rifles came with a fixed stock. Looks just like this. They just drilled a pin through here and put it in there. So it can't move.
So a lot of these seem
cosmetic and superficial and dumb as fuck.
So what was the point?
They didn't know what they were doing.
Just to get an inch?
They thought that if they could do that would just shut it down, that the gun company couldn't go, you banned features. So they just removed the features.
Right.
You know what I mean? And there's a handful of other features, but those are some of the biggies that were just real dumb. And so there was nothing. The other big one was the magazine capacity. So they said only 10 round mags, only 10 rounds in your magazine. So
for a rifle. Not
for everything that takes a magazine. So, and I still have some because I've been shooting since before, 94. I still have some magazines that are the same size as this that should hold 17 that hold 10. They just hold 10. They filled in the rest. I've seen those. They filled in the rest with plastic.
JB's got a few of those.
Yeah, those are old training mags. Yeah, we just use them as training mags now. But so they said, okay, you can have the Glock, but it can only or same thing with the rifle. You can have the AR once you've neutered it and removed some of the features, and you can have a 10-round magazine. Okay, so I get a 10-round magazine, whatever. But there were already so many 30s out there that you could still buy the old ones. You just couldn't make any new ones. So anyway, Bill Clinton gave us the assault weapon ban in 94. There's more to that, but that's good enough for our purposes. That sunset or went away in 2004, and they never renewed it. So that went away, and boom, explosion of modern rifles being brought to market.
Everybody started putting bayonets on their rifles again.
It was just hilarious because nobody uses a bayonet.
Yeah,
this is not funny. World War I, sir. We're not charging the trenches, dude. We're like what are they but
so I think a big part of that, bringing that up and first Biden bringing that up as like some sort of clout, it
just sounds good to the soccer mommies and all the type of people who would go, oh yes, those scary assault rifles.
I hear the word assault weapons
and I hear the word ban,
I'm gonna vote,
and I like those two words.
I'm going to vote for it.
So yes, so I'll go for that because somehow that makes them feel safer. Yet all of their personal security is armed. I'd like to count the number of rounds in their magazines. I bet it's more than 10. But yeah, so again, all of the private security may have. There's always a carve out for that. All of the police may have. The military may have. Secret Service may have. All kinds of goodies. You don't need that. So I needed to protect this important person, but you don't need it because you're not important. Your family's not important, peasant. Back, that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Because all these celebrities that get out there and forever run their mouths about banning everything that goes bang. I'm like, I bet if I walk up and slap you in the face, I'm going to be met with security, and I bet you that security is armed. Right. And I bet you, just like that, they just never, they conveniently leave that part out. All the rich guys run around, you think any of the billionaires out there aren't running around with full security details.
Right.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
You know, but they can't wait. Oh, yes, let's get rid of all that. I don't own any guns. Well, you don't need to. You can employ a small army that carries everything that you would ever need.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
you have your own police.
Exactly.
Right at your beck and call.
Just like that. So back to what we're talking about, the whole banning thing. So that went away in 2000, 94 to 04, assault weapons ban. That was only a semi-ban. That went away. And up until Obama, who didn't get anything really significant passed, he did a few executive actions that were irritating. And then Trump, who executive ordered the bump stocks to go away. The bump stocks.
Oh, and this was after the shooting.
The Las Vegas shooting, which happened conveniently the day before they were going to vote on removing suppressors from the NFA registry. They were going to make these a regular item instead of a tax stamp item and a paperwork item. You would just go to the gun shop and buy one. They were going to remove them from the registry and get them out of the NFA and that nightmare of paperwork and hassle, and make them as a regular item. And magically, somebody mysteriously showed up with bump stocks, and that kind of sort of simulated machine guns, and so that just went away.
Yeah,
and then they said, let's ban the bump stocks.
Why don't you explain a bump stock and how it emulates a kind of a burst fire?
So we talked about. Get this here. So we talked about how
you can pull it back a little bit. Yeah, so it's not so close. Yeah, that's good. Right, that's
okay.
perfect.
So we talked about how a semi-auto rifle, right, goes bang, one shot, one trigger pull. The gun will cycle on its own, reset the trigger, bang, 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 bang. I have to pull the trigger every time. So full auto means I pull the trigger and it goes brrr until it runs out of ammo, or I take my finger off the trigger.
Which, by the way, is very hard to continue to shoot fully automatic accurately.
Yes, they're not nearly as useful as the movies would. We ought to, for one of your podcasts, we ought to rent one. I got a bunch of buddies that have a bunch of them. We'll go out and shoot some machine guns.
That's a good idea. That sounds good.
They're not as useful as you think. They're fun the first time or two, and then after that, you're like,
well, I'd imagine, from a person who's afraid of like a mass shooter using it, shooting off into a crowd, that would be a lot different when you don't even have to worry about aiming, right? If you have like just
you still got to again, if you're shooting into a crowd, I mean, I suppose, but again, this is one of those we go round and round in a circle. If they're going to shoot into a crowd, they're going to shoot into a crowd.
Right.
Why is he shooting into a crowd?
Right.
So a bump stock, back to the bump stock thing. So a bump stock is now illegal, and it was this goofy device that moved back and forth on a little piston, or on a piston. It moved back and forth this way.
Oh, okay.
Right. So what you would do is hold the trigger down, bang, I shoot one shot, and instead of the gun firing full auto, it would sort of vibrate back and forth against your finger, giving you a faster rate of fire. Now, they were not well liked by most people in the serious shooting community. None of us used them. They were kind of silly. They were a range toy. They sold a bunch of them to people who didn't know better, that they're not terribly useful. But everybody thought, it's neat, so we're going to get them. And they got them. They sold a bunch of them. And then they just declared with the stroke of a pen, you may not have them. So it was legal to have when I bought it, but now I snap my fingers and they're gone. And you must turn them in or destroy them, or it's a felony. Felony, 10 years.
So what type of guns or weapons do you think should or should not be made illegal for people? In your opinion,
my opinion, I think I'm for banning everything above 105 millimeter conventional. So everything up to 105 millimeter howitzers.
So like a 50 cal or
105 millimeter howitzer is a shell it's a cannon.
Okay.
It shoots a shell this big. You need a truck to pull it.
Right.
It's
105
millimeter howitzers. I kind of joke and kind of don't. And I say conventional because we don't need any fancy rounds. Just everything conventional will be fine. No nuclear or nothing like that. But I'm kind of joking in that you can take this up to as far as you want to go with it and say, well, we don't need this, we don't need that. You just go in a circle with that stuff. Well, again, so
I'm asking it kind of facetiously, obviously, because it leads me to the next point about the idea, and I think what separates you, because a lot of people would, and myself included, but would think of you as a Republican in that sense, but you're much more a libertarian in that sense.
Oh yeah, I'm usually angry at the Republicans, the Republicans as I like to call them.
Right, and the big purpose of that, or the big concept of that, is again going back, akinning libertarians to the anti-federalists. It's the idea of let people live their lives.
Let me do me, man.
Let me do me, and let me take personal responsibility for my actions. Teach my kids what they should and shouldn't do.
I don't think they should be able to tell you what you grow in the ground.
Yeah,
or what you smoke, or what you. I mean, they just don't have any business to telling you who you're going to marry. Who you can or can't. These things they're just flat out not their business. And to say, well, we've had to make it our business.
Well, again, same thing. It's any law that is enacted, opportunists will find a way to circumvent it to make it to their benefit. Take what you just said. You can grow anything you want in the ground, or you like to do that. Well, now that it's become legal, people are taking advantage of that. People are capitalizing that. Governments are making lots of money. Colorado's making tons of money taxing marijuana, right? So that's good for government, and I'm sure the government will find another way to control that, so they can make more money or have more power to control that. And then you take something like painkillers, right? This big the
opioid problem.
Problem
epidemic.
With, this basically legal heroin that was sold by doctors to patients, telling them it would
through pharmacies, paid for by insurance. Everybody was involved. Everyone got a taste of the money.
It's no different. It's no different than with the guys. It's like, what's the difference between that or Ritalin, and the fact that like it is so easy? Dude, do you know how many people I knew that had a Ritalin prescription for ADD in college? Like every single person had it. Not every single person has ADD. It's just there's that old South Park episode that's funny. But anyways, not everybody has ADD, but everybody seemed to have ADD in college. Everybody seemed to have access to those pills. And same thing with OxyContin and painkillers. It's crazy how that was made illegal, and now it's finally coming back to.
Turns out it was a problem.
Yeah. So I don't see how people can't
kind of like mask mandates. Like again, a lot of this firearm discussion, I think in the last couple of years has really kind of died down a lot.
Yeah.
Due to a combination of massive government oversteps, massive, throughout the pandemic, massive oversteps that we're now learning. Oh, turns out were thoroughly unnecessary. They probably knew that they were unnecessary, did it anyway. So you've got a combination of massive government oversteps, a fairly well documented breakdown of law and order for a fair amount of time, and in some places still continuing. Right. Prosecutors who won't prosecute. We've defunded and made law enforcement essentially ineffective. If they were not terribly effective before, now they're 0, or 5% effective. And all the ensuing problems that are coming from that. The mob.
Well, so
scenes that we saw over the last few years, and still from time to time see again. And remember, we have election coming up, so we're probably going to get to see those again. I think that has done away with the argument to get rid of these.
Right.
Like, just turn on the news and tell me you want to get rid of these. What?
Right.
Where were you the last 3 years?
You know what I mean?
Like
saying,
this is
how many people went out and got a gun during COVID?
Yeah. This is a moot point. This is done. In fact, the argument for why you should or shouldn't own a belt-fed machine gun is now gone. Like, you need a rifle? No, the question is, why shouldn't I have a belt-fed when a mob shows up? It's good at getting rid of mobs. Belt feds, but
yeah,
that's
and so
it's a bit extreme, but
no,
I'll take it. I'll own that one.
So being a libertarian in that sense, where we want small government, and we want, and again, the anti-federalists were against a federal government. They wanted just state-run smaller government, and so what roles? Because I think we need. Obviously, government for law and order. We need government for certain laws, for certain aspects of life, right?
To control the border.
Right. But
I don't know.
But
yeah,
the hard part is drawing the line, right? Like, where do we draw the line? For example, we need police. Let's agree that we need police, right?
I agree. I work in public safety. Yes, we need
you're-
police.
we need firefighters. We need EMTs, right? We need, so what, where do you
draw the line? Exactly. And I think it's these days, I would say common sense and be reasonable, right? I feel like I'm the guy who's always begging everybody to just be reasonable. And I feel like I'm constantly told, go away. We want to get crazy with this. I'm like, oh, we're just driving this thing full speed off the cliff. That's our plan. We're just full speed ahead, but the cliff's up there. Can we just slow this down and be reasonable? No, we want to just full steam ahead towards the cliff. And I'm like, oh, okay, man, but begging to be reasonable. But I think that in answer to that, it's, you could be reasonable and say, well, if this, then that, you know what I mean? Like there's no difference, or there's no, why does this short one have to cost more money? Why does, what?
Yeah, I think it's
why do I have to pay more money for a suppressor when it's a very useful tool?
Right, like a 10-inch barrel versus 16-inch
barrel.
It's pretty negligible,
the
right?
gun does the same thing.
Right.
Is it, well, you can hide one easier.
Not really. I can't really see myself hiding this one more than that one, right?
It's whatever. I mean, at this point now we're just playing games. You know what I mean? We're just playing games with it all.
It's like a power struggle about
what. You said it. It's a power struggle, and they're trying to amass the power so that they have all of it on their side, and you have none of it. And if the last few years were not proof positive of that, I don't know what to tell you. I can't even have a discussion with somebody who's in that camp, because they, like, if that's how you think, I mean, come on, that's you're actively denying reality now, and I refuse to participate in your delusion any longer. Like, I'm not here to baby you. I'm not here to tell you what to do. If you want to believe that, you knock yourself out, and good luck to you. Yeah. Don't tell me, how I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's I mean, that's one of the big reasons why I keep liking Vivek more and more. The more I just, have him, he's on the long form podcast I've been watching. He's everywhere on this podcast. And, he understands the socials.
Well, he
understands the, how modern stuff works.
He understands how modern stuff works.
Yeah.
He understands that, his biggest driver, his biggest policy is bring back nationalism, bring back patriotism, bring back families, like the family institution.
Dangerous words, Vivek.
It's like
oh, he's saying all the things.
Family is to me, family is a new cool. And the more I've been thinking about this, having two kids, the more I realize like how much of an effect I have on these two little monsters. And how when you think about a criminal who grows up, listen. We tend to put things on a mass scale, right? We generalize in America. You're this group is that, right? Mm-hmm. We stereotype. But go back to the smallest common denominator when it comes down to is individuals make decisions that create a cause and effect. A criminal, somebody commits a crime. Why did they commit the crime? Well, was it a function of their environment? Was it, and largely a lot of times is a function of their environment. I'm not to say the world is perfect, and that people have their struggles, whether it's not everybody has the same equal opportunity. We're not. Listen, we're lucky to have been born in America in the first place, right? Like some people who are born in a third world country with no running water, that's like another level of craziness. But we're lucky to be enough to be born in this country, and some people a lot luckier than others, depending on this. I would argue more the socioeconomic. I wouldn't say about my personality. My personal opinion is not about the race; it's about the socioeconomic world that they grew up in, and if that happens to be more centered towards one race or another, like Asian Americans make a lot more than white people per capita. Does that mean Asians are racist towards white? Does that mean the white people are disenfranchised? No, it's just the family unit of Asian families is extremely strong. There's I have a lot of I live in Irving. I have a lot of Indian piano students, and the family unit in the Indian culture is extremely tight.
Will be maintained.
Yeah. I mean, arranged marriages still, there's, and listen, you can have your own opinion on that, whether that's good or not. And, the more I think about it, the more it's really not that bad, like the idea of it, I'm not saying anything about my situation, but I'm just saying it doesn't seem that bad if the right, terms are met, if you seem to like the person. I don't know, obviously, but, grandparents retire and they live with the family. They live with their kids, so the kids take care of their parents as they get older. That's and so the family pools their resources together. The family is number one. And of my just from anecdotal, and I'm sure there's demographics in certain per capita that would probably back this up, but just from anecdotal me as a teacher, my best students are my Indian students, generally speaking, because they have there's a strong sense of a family unit that tell them, hey, it's time to go work and practice. There's a certain ethic, a work ethic that's put under pressure, and you can argue whether it's undue pressure, maybe it's too far, too much putting pressure on the kids, or not enough. But there's something there grounding them in giving them some sense of self, some sense of duty, some sense of and people who don't have that are just aimless, floating in the wind, and they don't have that sense of duty or that sense of purpose. And I think the family unit, I know it's long-winded, but I think the family unit is an extremely important aspect of what makes you because it teaches you to be accountable for your actions.
Well, and I think you're not the only person that has recently discovered this. You know what I mean? Not that you have recently, but I think a lot of people have recently kind of come upon this same concept as over the last few years, as a lot of people left places like New York City, etc. During
California coming here to Texas.
Well, but a lot, excuse me, a lot of them from New York, moved elsewhere and worked remotely. And now that a lot of these like big banks and things like that are demanding they come back to work, they're all going, kind of like it out here. Turns out I like working from home, and it turns out I like not going into Manhattan every day. And it turns out I like working around living around my family more. And I'll keep working remotely, or I'll find something else to do.
Yeah.
And it's driving the banks mad right now, trying to get them. How do we get them back? And put things back the way they were. And so I think a lot of people have kind of come to this conclusion that
I hope
a rediscovery
of the importance of family, and I hope it's something that's a lot bigger than. I think it's also been rediscovered. And I hope that it's on a large enough scale to make a difference when it comes to election time. I think that Vivek's also desire to cut down. He said on 75% of hired staff that are hired by the executive branch, right? The stuff that he can control, that he could control as president, and
sure.
Okay. A lot of this is redundant. A lot of the FBI, he's talking about spreading the FBI back to the marshals or to the DOJ, and putting them, continuing to do their tasks, but cutting down on the redundancies in because there is so much redundancy in the government. There's so much red tape and to plow through. So, that would cut down drastically on costs, and also again reduce the power and the stronghold that the government can have on people. I think that's something that again, we need less of. We need order, but it starts with the community. It starts with your community. It starts where you live.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping. It's still a long ways away, but I'm hoping something good comes of that. And I hope, at least, if anything, it opens the public's eyes as to an alternative to what could be to
the standard two choices that we've always had.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, cool, man. This was fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time, showing me some toys, and then next time we'll do it over at the range.
Yeah, we'll do like a live version.